This tutorial is for Vincentians within a conference who are acting as the case management system administrator for the conference. The CMS administrator for the conference should have a general familiarity with the use of CMS and should be available to assist other members in the conference with any questions or issues that they may encounter with CMS. You are also responsible for managing the information about the conference in CMS and assigning roles to the various Vincentians that use CMS. When you log into CMS, go to My Conference. The first thing a conference administrator is asked to do is enter information about the conference into CMS. This information can be accessed by any of the other conferences, and it's always very helpful to have an address, a telephone number, the service area that is covered by the conference, any particular notes about the type of assistance provided by the conference, or any other information that you think would be helpful to other conferences within the council. The list of officers will be automatically populated as you assign officer roles to them in CMS. The next tab is configuration. This is normally set up by the council at the time the conference adopts CMS. You can go through it. If you have questions about the information, you should contact the resource analyst at the council, and the two of you can coordinate any changes that would be made to the configuration. The next tab deals with roles. This is something very important for a CMS conference administrator, because each person that is either new to the conference or new to CMS needs to be assigned a role within CMS. First, we'll go to conference member. Every person in the conference should be entered as a conference member. Select conference member and look, and if the person that you are seeking to add is not listed, select assign. Put the person's last name in and search. If you cannot find this person in the list, you will see the name you entered in a grayed out area in the top. Select the grayed out area, and it will now give you the opportunity to enter information about this particular Vincentian. So first, you indicate that this is an active Vincentian, that the anniversary date of the person becoming of a Vincentian, you put their first and last name, you select their gender, you select ethnicity, the age group, any of their contact information. Once you check all of the information for accuracy, you select create. And it says you may proceed without supplying age information, but the age is valuable for reporting purposes. So you're now getting a prompt that we forgot to put age in there. So we'll put the date of birth, select create. One thing we did not include, it should be included because each conference member will be included on a roster, and the contact information is helpful for other Vincentians, is an email address. So if you have forgotten certain information to enter, or you need to update information, just go back and select the conference member. You will see now that this member is listed, and you can edit. Select save, select OK, and it will now take you back to your selection of roles. The next role to look at is caseworker. If a person is going to be assigned as a caseworker and will be entering information into CMS, they need to be assigned a caseworker role. Select that. Again, look to see if the person is listed. If they are not, select assign. You can once again put their name in and search. This time you see that Jane Doe from your conference is listed as a member. So now you click on this person and it will add this person as a case worker in CMS. The first time you enter a person into CMS, you need to assign them a username and a password. This will be the username and password that they will use to log on to CMS. Once you've completed it, select Create. Now it's time, if there are any other roles, to assign these roles. And again, this person may be a secondary caseworker. You select secondary caseworker. You look to see if she has been assigned. You see that she's not. So once again, you go to Assign. You search for her name. You select it. And it will now assign her as a secondary caseworker. There's no particular information to be entered for secondary. You have entered all of the information when you entered the contact information and the conference information when you initially set up this person as a conference member, and you set up the login information for CMS at the time that you selected this person as a caseworker. Now, one thing that you will get the opportunity to do, if either you are in the caseworker tab or the new member tab, is select their email preferences in CMS. So if you go to the top where it says email preferences, select that tab, and it gives you various types of situations where an automated email from CMS will be sent to this person. Again, you have to have this person's email entered into CMS in order for them to get the automated emails. Some people like to get very limited information when they are assigned a case. Others want additional information, such as when assistance is granted. You have the opportunity at any time to edit this and select or unselect any of the areas. So for example, most CMS caseworkers want to get an email when a case is initially assigned to them. So you would leave that checked. Same thing when they're a secondary. The question is now, if a case goes into a shared caseworker list, do they need the information? Many say no. Or if they go to an outreach center, or do they go to a case manager work list? So there are certain areas where you may say they don't need to get information each time. Do you want to get an email when a case is reassigned to you? Most people do, so you would leave that check. Do you want to get an email when a case you were assigned to is reopened? Oftentimes cases are reopened for various reasons by case managers or various officers, or by you as case administrator. So you may either deselect that or select it, depending on the wishes of the particular Vincentian. Then it gives you options as to if a treasurer approves a pledge, or if a pledge is converted to a check request, or if a pledge is submitted, or if a check is written. Most people will like to get notices. You would leave these checked. And the remainders deal with either red flagging when one of the friends that you've assisted has a red flag put in based on some issue that they've had with the conference, or if somebody is reported as a duplicate. And again, it's entirely up to the individual as to how many automated emails they would like to receive. Once you've decided on the appropriate selections, you select Save. You go back, all the information looks correct. And at this point, you can go back to your conference. And again, you go to your task pane, select My Conference from the home page. The other roles that can be assigned, many conferences assign intake person to everyone in the conference who will be using CMS, who may at some point have to do the initial intake. Oftentimes, caseworkers are being asked to do both intake and casework information. The others are specialty roles. For example, you will be assigned as a conference administrator, and it gives you certain privileges in working on this My Conference section, which I'll show you later, such as adding vendors and adding documents to CMS on behalf of the conference. Your conference president, secretary, your vice presidents all should be assigned roles within CMS. It gives them certain access to certain parts of CMS. Clearly, your treasurer needs to be assigned to CMS. The records manager is oftentimes the secretary, but may also be the CMS administrator. But you can check out the definition of the various roles if you go to User's Guide and go to the initial system introduction. And there's a section that deals with the various roles that are assigned within CMS. In this particular one, it'll start where it explains each of the different roles that you saw as a conference administrator when you were assigning roles. It explains what each of them do. If you have any questions, again, you can contact either the CMS committee or you can contact the resource analyst at the council. The next section deals with zip codes. It's very important for those zip codes covered by your conferences for them to be added into this particular section. The reason this is important is that if you go to enter information about a friend outside of your covered zip code, CMS will give you the option to refer that case to another conference. So it's important to have your zip codes entered in there in order for CMS to recognize what areas are covered by your conference. This next area deals with new vendors. During the casework, when pledges or check requests are entered into CMS, it asks for vendor information as to where the checks are going to be sent. It'll do it for apartment complexes for rent. It will do it for utility companies for utilities. And typically any type of payment in any category will ask for vendor information. As the CMS administrator, you will see a list each month of the new vendors. The existing vendors are listed under this next tab, and you'll see they'll give the categories such as utilities for Ambit Energy or housing for Briarstone's apartment. These entries are important because these names appear in the drop-down menus when you are adding vendor information into a pledge or a check request. So if you see a new vendor, it's one that has not been entered into CMS before, you can select it. It's going to ask you whether or not you want to add this vendor or would like to make some edits and then add it. The first thing you should do is check the list below that has all of the existing vendors and see if they are already listed. In this case, Washington Avenue Apartments is not listed. We're going to select add and edit because we want to include an email address for this particular vendor. You can add phone numbers, you can add any information you want. And again, this will show up in the drop-down menu. You select save. And just to show you how this is used, we're going to show you one of the drop-down menus. And if you're going to be adding a check request, and let's say this check request is for an apartment complex. You're now asked to put vendor information in. So first you select your category of housing. And under vendor, you'll notice there's a drop-down menu. The drop-down menu contains all of the vendors that have been added by the CMS conference administrator to the vendor list. So if you recall, we just added Washington Avenue Apartments. They now show up. So instead of having to re-enter all of the information about Washington Avenue Apartments, all you need to do is click on it. It automatically adds all of the information from the saved information. So this is a big time saver and convenience for members of your conference. So again, you should periodically check the new vendors, and if they are not already added, add them. You can go back to existing vendors and you can open them. You can make changes if you need to the information and save that. If you need to update anything with respect to those particular vendors. But All of these vendors will now appear in your drop-down menu. If you're providing utilities, only the utility vendors will appear. If you're providing other types of assistance, such as housing, only the apartment or the other housing information will appear. The next tab that I want to point out is documentation. You can skip required documents. We don't have required documents within our particular council. The documentation lets you add information about your conference. So for example, if you have closed out a month and have generated a monthly conference report, you would like to make this available to all of the Vincentians in your conference who are on CMS, you can add it. You go to conference report and you tell it to add a document. It will then let you choose a file and you choose where on your computer that document is stored. You add that document, you give it a name, and you tell it to upload, and that document is added. In this particular case, we can see that monthly reports have been added for all of these various months, and anybody who has access to CMS can get into this conference, my conference section of CMS, and go back and see the conference report that has been filed. You can do it for other areas too. If you have training materials, if you have minutes, bank statements, and other types of resources. If you have referrals that members of your conference routinely give to friends, you can store those here so anybody on CMS can easily access it. The next thing that you should look is that under my conference, again, in the task pane, there's a membership roster section. If you select that, it will now give you a roster. It contains names of everybody who has been assigned a role within CMS. So if somebody has been assigned as a member, whether or not they're given additional roles, their name will show up along with their status as a Vincentian, the roles that they have been assigned within CMS, their address, their phone number, and their email. This is very convenient for a conference member to be able to access information, to contact other members in the conference. Case distribution. This is a report that if there are unassigned cases within your conference, it will give you a listing with the information about the unassigned case. If there is no unassigned cases in your conference, this will be a blank, as this one is showing right now. So that is the information that you would need to be a conference administrator to keep your conference information up to date. Also, you will be the interface with the council, and you will be able to go to the web page that is on the Galveston-Houston Council's website for CMS support. And there will be areas where you can contact either the resource analyst, or you can put a request in for an enhancement. You can put a request if you have an issue that you need to discuss or would like to have resolved. You can also access training videos. There are a number of resources on that webpage that you as conference administrator can access, and you can direct others in your conference to the appropriate training materials. You can help them report any type of issues they may be having, and you can certainly get any additional training you need. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. Thank you for your attention.